Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, it's game day. The hottest team in the National Hockey League is bringing their talent to Ottawa. Bruins and Sens tonight at 7 o'clock.
And we got to hear from Steve Staios today for a mid-season press report, so we'll tell you all about our reaction to some of his quotes.
Not only that, but Jacques Martin says there could be some lineup changes. We'll get into what those could be and more on a game day preview edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 967 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan in the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can follow the show on social media. We're at Send Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers in the U.S. can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 wager. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today is Thursday, January 25th, and Pilsy, if I was in Ottawa tonight, I would be on the Glebe Central Pub shuttle. This game has a bit of feel to it. Like Ottawa's 4-1-1 in their last 6 games, but this is a true tough test.
Yeah, I mean, they just went up against the Winnipeg Jets on the weekend. Similar style team, similar spot in the standings. So the work doesn't get any easier going up against the Bruins tonight. But it's a home game. Let's get the CTC packed. And the best way to do that is to hop on the Glebe Central Pub shuttle and have a blast watching this game. We're fired up for this one.
Certainly are. And look, the Jets, they're injured. They are. They didn't have Scheifele, and Velarde was, kind of in and out of the lineup. He didn't play Monday in Boston after they beat Ottawa in that game in overtime. And the Bruins took it to the Jets, ending their streak of allowing 3 or less goals at 34. So this Bruins team, they took the Jets that were coming off a win in Ottawa, and they played with their food. The Jets had 10 shots on goal after 2 periods. And that's the calling card of the Boston Bruins. Full game day preview a little bit later on, but Steve Staios spoke to the media. I want to start there, and how reassuring it was that I wasn't worried about what he was going to say, not for a second.
Yeah, it's bittersweet emotions, Ross, because when Pierre Dorion used to have press conferences, you were pretty much guaranteed to get 1 or 2 interesting quotes that had a lot of meat on the bone to pick from. But Steve Staios, a lot more kind of calm, focused, not really saying anything too interesting, although there were some interesting nuggets. I mean, more the way he says things is very kind of Steve Staios, like professional, right to the point, not really rambling or using very many anecdotes or clever ways to say things like Pierre used to like to try to get off. So a different approach than what we're used to, but some good nuggets in here from Staios for sure.
What was the overwhelming theme for you?
Kind of like I talked about, just that new tidied up professional look from the press conferences here from general manager Steve Staios, a little different than what we're used to. But the one quote that kind of jumped off to me the most, Ross, and maybe this will surprise you, but I thought it was interesting that Steve Staios kind of pumped Jakob Chychrun's tires in saying he's playing really well on the right side. Has he played really well on the right side? I don't think I've seen a single Sens fan happy with the Chychrun pairing. And I would argue that Chychrun has played much better when he's been allowed to be on the left side. And I don't know if this is Steve Staios trying to pump up a guy that's had his name in trade rumors and say, hey, no, he's doing good in the role we have to kind of keep him happy, or if that's more kind of showcasing him a little bit to other people. So I guess maybe it could be a bit of both at this point. Chychrun signed for this year and next. So it's not like he's an expiring deal that you have to make a decision on right away. But I thought that was the one that really stuck out to me, Ross.
Interesting. Yeah, make your own conclusions to that whole conversation. We had a whole episode about Jakob Chychrun and what his future could hold. We had that last week, so if you missed it, go check that out wherever you get your podcast. For me, the most interesting part was the coaching aspect of this, and he stopped short of guaranteeing that Jacques Martin would finish the season with the Ottawa Senators, but continually said how great of a job he's doing, everything that was expected of Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredsson and Ben Sexton and Jack Capuano. He's quick to point all that out, even including the most recent addition, goaltending coach Justin Peters in the mix. But that was a little bit of a surprise to me. And talking about the timing, how it just wasn't right for Patrick Waugh to come in there, I think that what Steve Staios was hoping, or what I think at least, is that this team would learn the foundation throughout the rest of this year, and then that they would have really considered hiring Patrick Waugh in the offseason. Of course, that's not available to them anymore, as Patrick Waugh took the job with the New York Islanders. Nobody's going to wait for an NHL head coaching job that might be there. So there's no doubt Patrick Waugh did the right thing jumping on the opportunity he was given. But that does kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth. I know that a lot of Sens fans are split on this one, where they felt like Patrick Waugh was either the perfect candidate or the worst possible candidate. Time will tell. We'll see how it works out as we watch from afar with New York. But there's a pedigree that Steve Staios, I think, is looking for. And to me, I was kind of waiting for the between the lines of John Gruden, the name that's just associated with Michael Andlauer and Steve Staios from their championship run with the Hamilton Bulldogs back in a few years ago. But to me, it really does feel like they're going to go with someone with a little more clout or a little more, resume to them, which I hope they do. Look, Craig Berube would be a good name to go after. There's names of guys who aren't on the market now. We always know at the end of the season, there's changes that are made in multiple situations. So I guess we'll wait and see, but I think Jacques Martin should finish the year with the Ottawa Senators as a compliment to the work that he's done. But I don't even know if he's going to get an interview, because it really did feel like Steve Staios was saying that, look, he's laying the foundation for the next guy. He said that word for word. So is Jacques Martin going to stay with this organization? Does he even want to be a head coach going forward? That's a question that will be answered over time. I really hope so, because Jacques Martin has brought the professionalism that was up in the management role. We're hearing that every single day with these press conferences.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jacques Martin has the interim head coach tag for a reason, right? Patrick Waugh, not an interim head coach. A bunch of the other new coaching changes, not putting that label of interim on there. So that's no surprise to me. And it would be wild, even, I want to say unprecedented, Ross, for a team to have 3 different head coaches in the same season. Like that doesn't happen.
Sens have done that before.
When?
Guess what? When Jacques Martin took over, ultimately. It was Rick Bowness started the year. Then they hired Dave Allison, who infamously went 2 wins, 22 losses, I believe, in 24 games. And Jacques Martin told the story yesterday. It was a great question by Bruce Garriock, where he said, what was that all about? So go watch it. The Sens posted on their Twitter. It was 28 years ago yesterday that Jacques Martin was initially hired with the Ottawa Senators. Wild that it's that long ago. But he's like, yeah, I was at the All-Star game. I don't know if it was in Montreal or up. It was somewhere near Ottawa. And he flew all the way back to Colorado. And then the next day was told that he had to come back. And this is pre-cell phones and everything. So highly recommend checking out that story. Even a little shade to Lance Pitlick. My first Sens jersey was Lance Pitlick. I probably just liked the name as a 5-6-year-old, but he's like, I came to my first practice in Ottawa, and Lance Pitlick stayed out for extra work after practice, and he couldn't stop with 2 feet. I said, this is the players that we have, but ultimately he worked hard to get to ultimately wearing a letter for Ottawa a couple of years later. So some great insight from Jacques Martin there. I think we're going to get some more of that throughout the rest of the season, but right now the Ottawa Senators, man, 4-1-1 in their last 6 games. So I think that we really got to continue seeing the way that they're playing. That said, the wins are against San Jose, twice against the Montreal Canadiens. So that one, grain of salt as well. Although the one win against Montreal and the win Sunday in Philadelphia, the come from behind win, which it makes it even more impressive, were both on the road. They matched their win output outside of Ontario on the road this last 2 days. I was going to say weekend, but it was Sunday, Tuesday. But they had 2 wins outside of Ontario, 2 wins in Toronto, and now they've got 2 wins in the last 2 road games. So now they're back home. They're starting a 3-game road trip. We'll have the game day preview, but Pilsy, there's one topic that we have to discuss from this Steve Staios press conference. He was asked 3 separate times about the Hockey Canada investigation into the 2018 alleged sexual assault in London, Ontario, with the gold medal winning team 2018. Of course, the Ottawa Senators had 2 players on that team, so that's where the questions stem from. However, the Globe and Mail has reported that 5 players have been summoned to London to turn themselves into police. Anything that we say would be speculation, and that's not something that we are comfortable or we think is right to do on this show. If and when names become available, if and when charges are laid, we will have more to say. But Pilsy, I think we just have to report the facts, and that is that 5 players who were on that team have been summoned to London to turn themselves in regards to that investigation, per the Globe and Mail.
Yeah, I mean, just like Ross said, like, we don't have any excess information or sources. I would implore everyone that is looking to learn more about this story, follow Rick Westhead. He's been on this trail a lot of the time. Katie Strang from The Athletic, and go ahead and read that article from the Globe and Mail. So
it was Robin Doolittle who wrote the initial article, citing multiple sources.
Yep. So look, go to the experts for this information. And I would also just put out a public service announcement. If you feel the need to start laying accusations or guessing at what's going to happen here, maybe just go ahead and delete that tweet draft. There's no need to try to point blame too early. There's no need to try to accuse players that you think might be involved, no matter how obvious or how apparent it seems like those players are involved. It does no one any good to do that. So follow those reporters, like we mentioned, go read those articles, educate yourselves. And I know it's been a long time of waiting, but until official charges are laid out and this investigation is closed, I would just follow along with everyone else. Not everybody has to have the first opinion on everything. So that's all I would say.
Yes, and same vein of that, it's not a time to be celebrating if names come out and it's like, oh yes, my player wasn't involved. Like, this has to be centered around the victim, and obviously this couldn't have been an easy 5 years plus of going through this. So we hope that the victim can ultimately find closure in all this and move on with their lives as best as they can. Steve Staios said as much today. Anything question related needs to go through the NHL and London Police. London Police did tweet out yesterday afternoon they anticipate having a press conference on February 5th. That's the latest of that situation. Overall, though, when we look at this situation from Steve Staios and all the questions that were coming into him today, it was a very relieving thing to have a State of the Union where the Ottawa Senators don't feel like they're going to jump into any major trades or any other situations. Steady Stevie Staios lived up to that nickname today. He was calm, cool, collected. And could somebody get this man a bottle of water? I mean, at the end, he was ready to wrap that conversation up. But basically, to summarize it, a lot of praise for the coaching staff as bringing stability. Heck of a lot of praise for Shane Pinto and the small sample size being that 200-foot player that the Sens are looking at. And he said this: I've looked at goaltenders, defensemen, and forwards. This guy, he's not tipping his hand at what kind of moves he can make.
Doesn't negotiate through the media, one might say. Doesn't
negotiate through the media. You know what we do on this show, Pilsy? We negotiate game by game. And tonight, it's going to be a tough test for the Ottawa Senators. We've got a game day preview next, looking at the Boston Bruins, your Ottawa Senators tonight. And make sure you check out the Glebe Central Pub Shuttle for just $17 to and from the CTC. Okay, more on the other side. This is Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Guys, FanDuel is North America's #1 sports book. They are also the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. We love FanDuel. They're the best. Why would you use anywhere else? They're my favorite sportsbook app easily. It's safe, simple, secure, easy to use. If a guy like me can use it, so can you. And I love the app because they have such a wide range of betting options. You can bet the spread, player props. I'm looking at Brady Tkachuk over under shots today. It's back to 3.5. So I'm trying to take advantage of that. You got the over-unders. You can make parlays and so much more. And not just on hockey, football, basketball, whatever you like. You can find it on FanDuel. And right now, new customers in the U.S. can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 off $5 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub. At 779 Bank Street, the Glebe Central Pub is your neighborhood spot to meet up with friends, to have some drinks, have some food, and ultimately have a great time. I can't wait to get back to the Glebe Central Pub. Take their Sens shuttle, just $17 round trip. Now, they have a shuttle tonight. Glebe Central Pub shuttle, just $17 gets you to and from the CTC. So go take advantage of that. GlebeCentralPub.com. Go to the Send shuttle and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. Blair and the team at Glebe Central Pub, they do such a great job of bringing the community together. So why don't you make it easy on yourself tonight and go on the Glebe Central Pub shuttle? Just $17. What a deal. Sue will get you to and from the game. They leave an hour and 15 minutes before. So get there early, have a pint, have a laugh, and then get dropped off there right after the Ottawa Senators game tonight. The vibes are free at the GCP. Go check them out at 779 Bank Street. And when you do, let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. It's the Glebe Central Pub. Great food, tasty drinks, and an awesome atmosphere. And visit them on the way to check out PWHL Ottawa in the heart of the Glebe. Pilsy, it's game day for the Ottawa Senators taking on the Big Bad Boston Bruins, the NHL's hottest team. And they erased... What?
The Edmonton Oilers are still on a 14-game winning streak.
The Eastern Conference's hottest team. Now, they did lose last night 3-2. They were down 2-0 going into the third period. They ultimately tied it, 2 goals from Brad Marchand, and then they gave up the game with 2.5 minutes left. Sounding kind of like PWHL Ottawa, who fell with the last minute goal. By the way, if you didn't notice in your podcast feed or on YouTube, we are separating the PWHL Ottawa content and Locked On Senators all under the same umbrella, but this way it's easier to find what you're looking for on a day-to-day basis. Episode 1 of the PWHL Ottawa report is available for you to check out on your favorite podcast platforms. But it is a game day tonight. 7 o'clock for the Ottawa Senators, hoping for a better result against Boston than PWHL Ottawa had last night, falling 3-2. The Ottawa Senators did great against Boston last year, though. The home opener, what a day that was. We were boots on the ground. 7-5. They had goals. They had leads. Artem Zub got the goal that put it away. The Swayman. But it's not going to be Swayman tonight. We'll save the Bruins for a little bit later because I want to get into the juicy topic of the Ottawa Senators lineup. And TSN 1200, we know the quotes are sometimes you got to kind of make your own adventure, get your own endings. They had 2 different lineups posted today, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Now, the second one had Kubalik as a healthy scratch or as a scratch. We know he was apparently dealing with a minor injury. He's missed the last 2 games, but he spoke to the media today and very much made it clear that he's playing tonight, right? That he said it's going to be great to play in front of his mom. Like, he's in the lineup.
Yeah, he's in the lineup. Jacques Martin even had some comments about him in his presser as well. So I think of choose your own adventure, Ross, whichever, if that's option A or B, whichever one had Kubalik in the lineup was the right one.
So other than 2 changes on the 4th line, everything else stays the same up front. Josh Norris will center Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux. Tim Stützle is between Ridley Gregg and Drake Batherson. Shane Pinto is centering Matthew Joseph and Vladimir Tarasenko. And Mark Kastelic is centering Dominik Kubalik and Parker Kelly. On the back end, that Sanderson-Zub pair stays together. Thomas Chabot on the left side, Jakob Chychrun on the right. Eric Brandstrom will play with JBD, and we expect Eunice Korpisalo to play in this game. He's coming off of his three best performances of the season over the last little while. Now, Pilsy, before we get to your locked on player, I also want to pick up on one other thing that Steve Staios said, and that was the future of Vladimir Tarasenko. And he was equally as impressed with the play away from the puck and the leadership and what kind of person he is. Like, we did a little segment last week about, like, should the Sens keep Vladimir Tarasenko? And as it stands right now, Steve Staios has not gone to Tarasenko about moving his no trade clause. I'm leaning more and more like, I mean, he scores the game winner in Philly. He's just on the right side of the puck. And like, look at that as a third line. Now, the question will be, and we can get into this at a later date, like, can you afford to pay Tarasenko what it would take to have him as a third line player? But man, Pinto, Joseph, Tarasenko, that's a trio I want to see play a lot of minutes together here down the stretch.
Oh yeah, that's such a good third line. And the Tarasenko thing, Ross, like Steve Staios has mentioned, they're looking for veteran forwards. Well, if you trade Tarasenko at the deadline, you're like, okay, how can we get ourselves a Vladimir Tarasenko? Like it's kind of like the Nick Paul thing, right? They trade away Nick Paul and they're like, okay, we need a Nick Paul type. Well, you had one. So I really hope that they're able to find a way to keep Tarasenko. It'll be interesting to see if, the extension with Tarasenko kind of hinges on who the next head coach is going to be. We've heard rumblings that Craig Berube could be a guy. Not sure if Tarasenko and Berube have the best of relationship. Now, I literally say that as I'm not sure. I don't know. So that could be interesting. But I'd like to keep Tarasenko around. And you're probably going to have some money coming off the books next year. And hopefully the cap goes up. So I hope there's a way to fit him in this cap structure here.
It's great to see the Ottawa Senators forward group take shape here with a top nine.
Yes.
Everybody in the mix.
This top nine is incredible.
It really is. And they're going up against one of the deeper teams, I think, because we're seeing guys, and we'll get to the Bruins, guys who might not have the same name cachet that they've had in their bottom six in the past, but guys who are really stepping up in their role. So I'm excited to see Ottawa go head to head here. Down the middle, I think Ottawa's kind of got a bit of an advantage over the Boston Bruins. So we'll see that. Pilsy, who's your locked-on player to watch in tonight's game?
My locked-on player for tonight's game is Brady Tkachuk. He's had some interesting games the last little while here, and he's had some big rivalry games up against Montreal. Now he gets to keep it going up against the Boston Bruins. There's that famous picture of Brady Tkachuk as, like, I don't even know how old he is, like 10 at a Boston Bruins game with I don't know if that's one of the Ice Girls or who that is, but all-time hilarious photo.
That's actually Brady Tkachuk's first ever post on Instagram.
Okay, nice. So you gotta, and obviously a guy that went to college in Boston. So
his dad's whole side of the family's from there.
Exactly. So he has ties to the Boston area. So I was a little shocked, Ross. Brady's numbers up against the Bruins weren't. Yeah, there's the photo. Classic. I was a little surprised his numbers up against the Boston Bruins aren't as strong as I had hoped. So hopefully he can get things going here, but he does have 8 points in his last 6 games. So Brady's been clicking here.
What a caption too. If you're watching on YouTube, I posted this photo. Quote, what a way to start my day in Boston from 552 weeks ago. So attaboy Brady. And now he's a locked on player against the Boston Bruins. And for me, it's Uncle G, it's Claude Giroux, it's G money, it's cash money. And my goodness, what a player he is. Night in, night out. Like, your eye always just ends up going to him. He's entertaining on the ice. He's fun to watch. He's back up. He passes the 40-point milestone again. Fun fact about Claude Giroux, outside of the rookie season when he was 21 years old, he's never had less than 40 points in a season. And this guy's going into his 17th year in his 17th year in the NHL.
And Ross, are the seasons that you kind of adjusted those stats for, are those lockout or shortened seasons?
He only played 42 games, but it was a full season, but he was 21 years old, up and down from the minors. And yeah, 27 points.
He saw some short seasons throughout his career with the one lockout and then the COVID shortened season. So I was wondering if that affected it, but yeah.
The lockout shortened season when he was 25, he had 48 points in 48 games. Nice. And then during the COVID shortened season, he had 43 points in 54 games. So yeah, Claude Giroux is him. He's an unbelievable player. He is an Ottawa Senator and will continue to be. Even more egregious than any Jakob Chychrun rumor you're hearing out there is any fan base who's just saying, oh, I can't wait to add Claude Giroux to the lineup. No.
Who?
Oh, Jets fans, Canucks fans, anyone who needs a
Guys.
centerman. And that's the funniest part. They're like, we need a second line center, Claude Giroux. Well, tell me you haven't watched Claude Giroux, because this guy's played wing his entirety of his time in Ottawa. He just happens to be elite at faceoffs. But G-Money's not going anywhere. He's staying here. He's my locked-on player to watch tonight. You might remember, and I just want fans to close their eyes and just remember Claude Giroux scoring the opening goal in the home opener against Boston last year. First shift at home against in an Ottawa Senators jersey. He scores a goal. So he's my locked-on player. The fans, we always ask at Sens Central on Twitter, the citizens are all in on Shane Pinto. Pilsy, it is not even close. Shane Pinto, 61% of the votes on Twitter at Sens Central. Still time to have your say. Other options we gave: Jakob Chychrun, Drake Batherson, and Dominik Kubalik. Kubalik getting back into the lineup, playing in front of his mom before she goes back to Europe. So those are all things to keep in mind. On the other side, let's meet the Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins team they're going to be a little prickly after their loss last night to Carolina. They'd won 5 in a row before that. Let's get into their game day preview next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one convenient place. Don't waste your time on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. Why would you do that when you can do it all in one place with Indeed? Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed's Instant Match, their assessments, and virtual interviews. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your jobs than candidates who only see it in the search. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match your job description, and they can be invited to apply right away. Sit back, relax, let Indeed do the hard work for you. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you got to make every dollar count, especially in today's economy. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So go ahead and visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
It's game day for the Ottawa Senators taking on the Boston Bruins, a team that they've had a fair bit of success at one point, and there might have been one other team at the end of the day, but for a large portion of last season, they were the only team to beat the Bruins twice. They did so both times in Ottawa, the home opener, and then you might remember just after Christmas on December 27th, we can just call it the Cam Talbot game. Ottawa got outshot 27-5 in the third period. 27-5 in the third period, and they won that game in a shootout. 3-2 was the final score. I've actually got that game pulled up. It was Tim Stützle on the power play that opened the scoring, and I say that because Ottawa's power play has been atrocious. My key to the victory tonight, Pilsy, before we get to the Bruins lineup, the Ottawa Senators need to get the power play cooking. You have to at least break even on the power play or on the special teams tonight. I know they got the special teams victory last game because they scored shorthanded, and the Montreal power play is equally brutal. But this Ottawa team, man, they're on a 2-for-34 funk with the man advantage. They need that to get going. You can even go far back to ever since the coaching change, they're 4 for their last 51 on the power play.
Yeah.
Unsustainable to get any sort of consistent success. But what I will say is they did kind of pick it up in the third period against Montreal, that 5-on-3 where Giroux had the little touch the head, make the play. And then their subsequent one after that, I thought was better. So they need a power play goal so bad. The crowd would absolutely love it tonight.
Yeah, Ross, the Ottawa Senators power play has been atrocious recently. I mean, simply no excuse for this. They're 0 for their last 16, 4 for their last 51, good for 7.8%. Their last power play goal happened up against the Colorado Avalanche. That's how long it's been.
And what about number 2? Key to victory tonight, Billsy.
Yeah, you want to start this game on time. Like, this is not the kind of team you want to be trailing or, trying to catch up to. And like the Ottawa Senators have had multiple times this season, they get the opportunity to go up against a tired or at least more tired team than themselves, as the Bruins are on the second half of a back-to-back with travel and in a game that they lost. So this is going to be a game where if the Ottawa Senators can get off to a great start and wear down this Boston Bruins team, hopefully they can at least be set to fully finish them by the third period.
Get this for a stat. On the road this season, the Boston Bruins have scored first in 17 of their games. They've only allowed the first goal in 7. So you let them get out to a lead, and they're just going to play Boston Bruin hockey, make tough to get through the neutral zone. When they're trailing after the first period on the road this season, it's only happened 3 times, but they're 0-3-0. So if you can take a first period lead, you absolutely need to do that in the circumstances. And number 3, do not be afraid. The Boston Bruins have the second best points percentage so far in the NHL this season. They don't give up much defensively, so you have to capitalize on your opportunities and be confident in doing so.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got some, or at least one of the masters of that in Brad Marchand. Like, you cannot let this guy get under your skin. But Ross, the Ottawa Senators can counter that. Ridley Gregg has been doing a great job of getting under the skin of opposing veteran players and star players. So maybe him and Marchand, that could be something to keep an eye out for.
Ooh, that would be fun, wouldn't it? A little bit of a rivalry feel, because the last few games between these two teams, although they've been like good games, I feel like it's not been very physical. And we know the Bruins do like to play that style of hockey as well. Let's take a peek at the Boston Bruins, how they line up in today's game. And it's a team that, I mean, they can beat you in so many different ways, but it's not maybe on paper as dominant as you'd expect or have seen from this team in years past. Charlie Coyle is their number 1 center, centering Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak. The second line is Pavel Zacha between James Van Riemsdyk and Jake DeBrusk. Morgan Geekie is the third line center between Lauko and Trent Frederick. And the fourth line is Jesper Bokvist between Denton Heinen and Oscar Steen. On the back end, it's Matt Grzelcyk with Charlie McAvoy. It's Hampus Lindholm with Brandon Carlo. And it's Derek Forbort with Kevin Shattenkirk. We expect Linus Ullmark to start in goal. Linus Ullmark was suffering from a minor injury. He played last night, though, against Carolina. So I'm not sure if they're going back to him just because he missed a couple of games. They've been alternating pretty much back and forth throughout the entirety of this season. But then with him missing the last few games, Swayman's now started 5 extra games than Linus Ullmark. Ullmark's just a solid goalie. Won the Vezina Trophy last season, but Swayman, I'd say, would be the tougher of the two if we are going to go up against one.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, both goalies really good, but Swayman's having one heck of a year, and especially contract year for him, although he is an RFA after this. But you look at a 2.31 goals against and a 923 save percentage for Swayman. So, I mean, not that Ullmark is having a bad year by any means, but Swayman's been a tough guy to beat this year. So we're hoping it's Linus Ullmark here.
Yes, absolutely. And my lookout player is David Pastrnak. 67 points in 47 games. This guy is an absolute killer. If he can score from anywhere, he can score in so many different ways. And you have to be aware when number 88 is on the ice. And not only that, like, you look at the span basically since Christmas where the Boston Bruins have pulled away into a completely dominant fashion. Pastrnak is tied for 3rd in the National Hockey League in points, trailing only Nathan MacKinnon, Matthew Tkachuk, and he's tied with Mikko Rantanen and Nikita Kucherov. So that's some pretty elite company that he's keeping right now. You have to be aware when he's on the ice. He also kills the Ottawa Senators. I got to pull this up, actually, because over the course of his career, he has made a habit of beating up on the Senators. In 25 games, Pillsy, he has 32 points against Ottawa.
Yeah, Pastrnak, I knew it was more than a point per game because every time they play this guy, he's so dominant. And Ross, you took probably the number 1 guy to be looking out for, so I'll go ahead and make things easy, and I'll take the number 2, and I already mentioned him, number 63, Brad Marchand. I mean, this guy is so damn pesky to play up against, but he's not just a third-line grinder or scrub. He's an absolute dominant force points-wise in his last 6 games. He's got 6 goals and 9 points. He continues to get it done for the Boston Bruins, the captain of the Boston Bruins, now that Patrice Bergeron has moved on. So, I mean, anytime you play up against the Bruins for pretty much almost our entire lifetime, Ross, it seems like we're looking out for Brad Marchand here. So that's who I'm going to be watching for.
Good call. Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak. They make up 2/3 of the top line, but don't sleep on Charlie Coyle as well.
Yeah.
However, that center ice position is where Ottawa has to take advantage to win this game as well. A little deeper, I'd say, than a team like if we're going Shane Pinto matching up against Morgan Geekie, I like the Senators' chances there. I also think that, you know what, this game might be won or lost in the first 2 periods. We'll see, and we will react to it right afterwards as well. The postcast. We love the postcast, having all the citizens live in the chat, just getting after it. If you do miss it, though, live right after tonight's game, it will be available for you tomorrow wherever you get podcasts. We also have a great interview coming for you tomorrow. We're going to chat with Kenzie Lalonde covering the Montreal Canadiens, but she's also a TSN reporter covering PWHL Ottawa. And not only that, just an Ottawa girl, too. So it's about time we've had Kenzie on. Maybe we'll get into some Sens nostalgia with her. We'll also have a weekend preview. Look, the Senators have a tough schedule up until the All-Star break. They have 5 games left, and right now they're on a 4-1-1 stretch. Pillsy, allow me to get delusional for a second.
Oh,
I need it to get to 9-1-1. That would just be a chef's kiss going in. Even I'll take a couple more OT losses. I'll take a couple more. I'm not going to be greedy, but this is going to be a real tough test tonight. Boston Bruins at home, 7 o'clock. Rangers are in Ottawa on Saturday, and the Predators are in Ottawa on Monday. And then they go to Detroit for what will be showtime against the Red Wings Wednesday, January 31st. Final thoughts on today's show, Pills?
Final thoughts for me is this is a big, I was going to say measuring stick game. It's more than a measuring stick game. The Boston Bruins are well ahead of the Ottawa Senators, but similar to the game up against the Jets, like these are teams where they're probably coming in expecting an easier win. They're looking at Ottawa in the standings. So get back to that old Ottawa Senators where better teams are coming in here and they're kind of shocked and they get surprised at how hard this team plays. So I want to see a good game tonight for the Ottawa Senators, and I want to be vibing in the postcast, Ross. It's been refreshing to vibe in postcast. Let's keep that good times rolling.
That's the goal. For more on Locked On Senators, you can go check us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please leave a 5-star review. Those do help us out quite a bit. And if you are up for it and voting on the Faces Magazine Awards, we are up for Best Sports Podcast in Ottawa. So if you don't mind for throwing us a couple votes there, that would go a long way. For today, though, we say goodbye. We'll chat to you after tonight's game. If you are heading to the rink, look, the weather's not great. Lots of freezing rain. Take the night off of driving and let the Glebe Central Pub get you to and from the CTC. For today, though, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.